Because they're not, because some of these people are not careerists. They're like true believers in like some sort of like white Christian nationalist jihad that they're fighting. And I think she really thought she had sort of successfully been subservient to him or sycophantic to him. It wasn't enough.
That is like a world's smallest violin moment.
Yeah.
Poor Pam. Poor Pammy.
You ever just wanted something so bad and then you had it, but just for one fleeting moment?
You tear down the house, then you put up the rent. You pocket the cash, and you crush all dissent.
Welcome to the Red Diaper Pail, episode 32. We're recording on Tuesday, April 7th, which is also our release date. And this is a This is a podcast about art, culture, history, politics, technology, and parenting from a left perspective. My name is Simone.
And I'm John Paul.
We're coming off of Easter Sunday and also the weekend of the NCAA championship, in which UConn did not win, but did try hard.
Question around the league is, why does UConn only hire assholes to be their coaches?
Well, it's not fair. I mean, Dan Hurley is like a self-realized asshole.
Is it self-actualized asshole?
Yeah. And so that's different.
He's getting booed now just for like goofing around. He's getting booed.
People don't like UConn in March because they count UConn out, but UConn actually has the most grit, the most likelihood to win because they just believe that they're going to win and they play better basketball than anybody else in March. And it makes other teams and fans mad because everyone wishes they could be a UConn fan.
Mm-hmm. What was the score of the UConn versus South Carolina game?
The women's game? I don't know. I don't watch the women's team. I only watch men's college basketball.
Is that so?
Mm-hmm. No. I watch women's tennis and women's gymnastics.
Oh, so how's the UConn women's tennis team doing?
I don't know. Well, anyways, it's Easter Sunday.
You did a very good job with Easter this year.
We did.
I'm very happy.
We did it. We did a good job. Our kids who's all about like getting gifts and definitely got gifts that were less expensive than their siblings' gifts. Actually said it was the best Easter ever. So I don't know if that's like a maturation thing or what.
Let's hope.
But it was mostly because the Easter Bunny said he interpreted the Easter Bunny note as telling him that he was the greatest kid on earth.
I think the older your kid gets and still believes in the Easter Bunny, the better you've done as a parent. So
that's a really spicy take.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, how could you lie to your kids? Like, it's not like the progressive way.
I don't think it's lying. It's like engaging in make-believe. But the longer they buy it or are willing to like play along, I think the better you've done.
He didn't say anything skeptical about it at all today.
I know. He's going to be 15 years old and be like, you guys won't believe what the Easter Bunny said about me.
I think he might be at this. I think he might be at the stage where he's like, I don't want to think about it too much because I want to play along.
Yeah.
But he was testing that with Christmas by kind of saying skeptical things, and this time he was like, I'm all in.
Yeah.
We're all in.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Agreed.
Meanwhile, our next eldest believes that they are related to the Easter Bunny. They're like
that in One Direction.
An ancient magical bunny? I am blood relative.
Oh my God.
All right, horrible headlines on that note?
I guess so.
So Pam Bondi got fired?
I guess so. I don't know if I have much to say about this, except for I guess she disappointed Trump because the Epstein stuff has not gone away. And the prosecutions that she's supposed to do against his political opponents have mostly gone nowhere, mostly because of judges being like, this is ridiculous, which I guess she's supposed to fix by being a better lawyer. I don't know.
Unclear to me. But he is starting to fire folks, which I guess is interesting.
It is. I wouldn't want to be Hegseth right now.
Why, you think he's going to send him with the Hague?
The take online is that they're going after all the women because they're sexist assholes, which is like, I guess is true that their incompetence, I guess, is more apparent to people like this versus the obvious incompetence of people like Patel and Hegseth.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I wouldn't want to be Hegseth right now. I think he's probably the next to go.
You think they'll get rid of him in the middle of a war?
he will get rid of him in the middle of the war if he continues to look as bad as he does.
Meanwhile, he's letting Hegseth fire people, though.
I think he said to Hegseth, these are your decisions. You're gonna wear them. Win the war, or you're gone. And if you need to fire people, fire people. It's very disturbing that he fired the chief of the army. The army is the largest branch of the military by a significant margin. 36%. The next biggest is the Navy at 24%. It's huge. And the only way to interpret this, in my opinion, is that the army did not want to send troops in to Iran. The military in general likes to drop a bunch of big bombs and stuff like that when they feel like there are going to be consequences. But they really are conservative about casualties. They don't like casualties. They're careerists, so it makes them look bad. But I think just in general, they have a predisposition towards reducing casualties as much as possible. So my guess is they had a conversation that was like, we're not doing that. A ton of soldiers are going to get killed if you try and do that. And Texas said, isn't that what soldiers are for? To go get killed if it's better for the empire? And so they're gone. And the truly disturbing thing about this is he's replacing this guy with an aide, a personal aide of his, which is really what the fuck?
Yeah, well, you'd expect nothing less. His departing email says something like the U.S. troops deserve to be led by courageous and upstanding leaders. So he went out swinging, but it doesn't matter. It's just an odd management technique if you're going to scapegoat these people to let them I don't know, burn it all down on their way out, because you're just going to have very little to work with from a leadership point of view. But I guess that's not been a problem for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant theme with these people is they refuse to acknowledge material counterweight to their power, and as if they think that the problem all along has been people they had power that they weren't exercising. You can't. This is the 24th general that Hegseth has axed, and it comes at a cost. These guys, when they say, no, I'm not doing that. Yes. Is that breaking the chain of command? Yes. Yeah. Is it something that they can do, they can get away with a lot of the time because they have power at their disposal? They have recourse at their disposal if they start to just get pushed around or fired like this. And that's all going to catch up with Hegseth. But it's just in Hegseth's mind, it's, I'm your boss. I told you to do it. You didn't do it. So of course I can fire you. What do you mean? There's going to be no consequence. Everyone else was, I guess, went weak in the face of pushback.
So if this is Hegseth's war, then who's calling the shots on Trump's Truth Social threats? Can you do a reenactment of the recent Trump tweets?
Sure.
Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran.
That would make
there will be nothing like it.
That makes it Power Plant and Bridge Day.
Open the fucking straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah.
He is risen. Jesus Christ in our...
Praise be on Easter. Praise be to Allah. President Donald J. Trump.
What does he always say? He says...
crazy bastards.
He writes, let it be noted, or what does he write?
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
He didn't say it this time. That would be a great way to end it. Thank you for attention.
Praise be to Allah, and thank you for your attention to this matter. So are you, so I don't know, do you think Hegseth signed off on Bridge and Power Plant Day?
I think absolutely. So this is what they do. This is my understanding of what they do. Is how Trump believes whoever the last person to talk to him was. So if you want to create policy, to convince him of something, it takes about 5 minutes. And you and 7 other people just sit there lollying him. He's like, okay, that makes sense. Then you get the phone and you get him to tweet it before he leaves the room. Because then Rubio's going to come down the hallway and be like, are you out of your fucking mind?
I love it.
And then it's too late, though, if you get the tweet up.
This feels familiar to some things I've dealt with in my life. Not related to John Paul. No, but seriously, that's what I'm not alluding to. So another thing that's interesting about this tweet is that it was, 8 a.m. Easter morning. What What are you supposed to be doing 8 a.m. Easter morning if you're these fuckers?
Going to church?
Yeah, he skipped church.
He skipped it?
He did. Word on the streets, the man didn't go to church. Now I don't know if the people.
When was the last time the man went
lobbying
to a
him.
church for not a funeral?
Well, they've got people in the White House that are always like praying over him and stuff.
Does that count?
I don't know. If they come to you, is it not church?
No.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if Marjorie Taylor Greene went to church, but she did call him insane in a response to his tweet.
She's something. She's these women are going. Nancy Mace is hammering to get the Epstein files released with Bondi gone. I guess Bondi was begging and pleading not to be fired.
Why?
Really didn't want to get fired.
Why?
Because because she
gets a book deal now. I mean, this is just one stop on the.
Because they're not. Because some of these people are not careerists. They're like true believers in like some sort of like white Christian nationalist jihad that they're fighting. And I think she really thought she had sort of successfully been subservient to him or sycophantic to him. It wasn't enough.
That is like a world's smallest violin moment.
Yeah.
Poor Pam. Poor Pammy.
You ever just wanted something so bad and then you had it, but just for one fleeting moment? Because she's not going to be remembered as his great loyal attorney general. She'll remember it as someone he fired within a year and a half.
No one will be remembered as that because no one's going to last longer than 6 to 12 months.
And Barr made it through almost the whole administration.
No one knows. I mean, when was the last time anyone talked about Bill Barr?
Except for in relation to the Epstein files.
Yeah. Listen, I don't even know what our memory will look like once we get through this like AI misinformation, like nothing lasts longer than 30 seconds way of living in the world.
They're going to put all your memories on servers and charge you to access them.
Yeah.
But after you get your mandatory Neuralink.
Yep. And they probably just scoop out your brain of its ability to do it itself. All right, you want to do the next one?
Okay. This was earlier this morning. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. Like, someone's doing it. I don't know who's doing it. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran.
It's like a lead up to a television show that's premiering tonight. What will happen? No, or like finale. What will happen tonight on the finale? I don't know. Do you know? It will be wonderful and great and different than before.
I don't know. You don't know. Who knows?
I mean,
how could I know?
I mean, the tweet, now that we've seen what's happened in the next 12 hours, sounds a little different, and we're making jokes about it. But this morning, I think we should be serious about how, to me, that tweet crossed a line that we actually had not crossed before. I mean, he's crossing lines all the time, but like a sitting American president tweeting that an entire civilization will be destroyed and will never come back.
Yeah.
What does that mean? You're going to destroy the people, the cultural institutions, the hospitals, the libraries, the universities. I mean, that is what we've seen Israel do in Gaza, and I guess it's normalized now, but are we fully comfortable with normalizing an American president pledging genocide?
I mean, it's an incoherent, it's obviously ridiculous because he's saying the whole civilization will die tonight, and that is the way we're going to end 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death. Is just kill them all, and then there won't be death anymore because it'll be done.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've all like speedily passed by rules-based order, but like we don't have to. I mean, like it can be at the bare minimum inappropriate and troubling to read such a tweet, but a normal reaction would be, oh, we need to get people in there to escort him directly to The Hague. And I guess we'll just start over with this presidency with some new folks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you could even pretend to have the moral high ground as a political movement, but His base is completely bought into this. This is right for the world, and Iranians and Iran have made their choice.
An entire civilization will end tonight, but good news is we found less radical people to take over.
I mean, that's certainly not true.
I mean, the most radical person is the one claiming the end of a civilization. And honestly, like, it's a circus. It's a theater of the absurd. So everyone's like, there he goes again. But like, that's not a good enough reaction.
Yeah. No. And there's not been a lot of people calling for his resignation on this.
I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene did.
Yeah. And Ilhan Omar said something about it. And I think there's a Iranian congressman who said something. But otherwise, the Democratic Party's been completely...
Yeah. And honestly, like, I feel like if you let the fascists move the goal line all the time, you're going to end up in fascism. Like, it is okay to just have a normal human reaction to that tweet, which is like, oh shit, the man's either entirely off the deep end or a full-blown Hitler. Maybe we've miscalculated. We can have a normal reaction to that.
Yeah,
like,
no.
He didn't say we'll take out some infrastructure. He didn't say we'll bomb them to bits and win the war. He said we will end a civilization and disallow it from coming back.
Yeah.
So then, of course, this happened this morning. We had our life. We did our job. We did the kids. We almost went to baseball practice. And we were like, oh, we're releasing the episode tonight. What are they going to do overnight? But instead, we got another tweet from Trump, which does put that first tweet very much in the, like, announcing the finale of The Bachelor, serving up this next tweet he's going to tweet, which feels like maybe he was premeditated all along. But
yeah,
what is the next tweet?
Yeah,
what is the peace president bring us next?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the point of this is it has to look like he threatened them into submission,
And got
even if he already knew that there was a ceasefire coming.
That's how he gets everything. That's how he gets girls and clubs and presidency.
All right, so this is the next tweet. This is this evening at 6:30. Based on conversations with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Assam Munir of Pakistan, and wherein they requested that I hold off the destructive force being sent tonight to Iran, and subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sized ceasefire. Supersized ceasefire.
It's a double meal.
The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives.
Naturally, of course.
Yes.
Everyone knows that, right?
Everyone but Iran knew that
we've already won this war.
And are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East.
Very far along, which is why I threatened to
eliminate
their civilization. But we're very far along in a lasting diplomatic process.
We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. On behalf of the United States of America, as president, and also representative of the countries of the Middle East, when did that happen?
He's the president of the countries of the Middle East.
It is an honor to have this long-term problem closed to resolution. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump.
So,
the most important thing about that tweet is that he's talking about the 10-point Iranian proposal and not Trump's 15-point proposal.
Well, also, are we supposed to believe that he received this 10-point proposal?
Yeah, all of a sudden.
Just all of a sudden out of nowhere after they were like, oh gosh, guys, he's going to end the civilization. We got to get him a proposal.
So this is the 10-point proposal we know of. Is there a new one? I don't know. Of the 10-point plan that we know of, these are key aspects of it. Permanent end to hostilities, a lasting peace agreement rather than a temporary ceasefire. So it would seem to me that they blew past that already. But
yeah.
Security guarantees, assurances that Iran will not be attacked again, lifting sanctions, complete removal of all U.S. sanctions imposed on Iran, Strait of Hormuz reopening. Iran will reopen the vital energy route, but charge a $2 million fee per vessel to be split with Oman. Israel agrees to end strikes in Lebanon and other regional attacks. and revenue from the strait to be used for rebuilding infrastructure rather than direct reparations.
Okay. I mean, I think
If that's what they agreed to, obviously the media tomorrow is going to say he completely capitulated to Iran. But what actually happened probably is, as long as he gets the Strait of Hormuz open tomorrow, everything else is
right.
kick the can down the road. I don't care about any of that stuff. We'll work that out later.
And the part of the tweet that's important there is he's very clear, and people who've been analyzing this have said this. They're threading comments about their successes throughout their media appearances. We have eliminated their Navy. We have eliminated their Air Force, because they need to be able to claim a war success to end the war. So his tweet does that. His tweet says, to be clear, we've completely won this thing. It's been, been obvious for weeks. And now the natural thing after our complete win and my civilization ending tweet is to get the things we wanted. And obviously, and you're making a good point. There are things apparently we wanted that we didn't get. But he needs to save face and get the Strait of Hormuz open. Otherwise, he will end the global economy.
The thing that
I mean, that's the civilization that's ending. But
yeah, okay. The thing that I don't understand is Iran must understand that he's not a serious negotiating partner.
Yes.
He will not. Whatever he agrees to, he'll change his mind about the next day.
Yes.
And that this 2-week ceasefire is going to allow replenishing of the anti-air defenses of Israel,
yes.
plus like troop rebuild up and reposition, all these things. And if history is anything to base it on, Trump will kill your negotiators and start the war again when he thinks that that's in his best interest to do. Or if he's so stupid enough that he talked to some person, like Israel doesn't want a ceasefire because Israel is hoping this will continue forever and that the United States will be permanently at war in the Middle East so that they could do things like invade and annex parts of Lebanon. This is, in my opinion, why they threw out the Obama deal. He did that in the beginning of his first term. It wasn't because they thought they could get a better deal, but because
they don't want a deal.
They don't want a deal. They don't want a no deal to be in place because they don't want anything that legitimizes and stabilizes Iran.
So we've been in a position since the beginning of this war where since before the beginning of this war, that Iran can't negotiate it from a position of trusting anything that the United States is offering or says. So I feel like they've accepted that. And I feel like there's a lot of things about this deal that are reminiscent of the ceasefire deal in Gaza, which is that we'll call it a ceasefire, we'll call it a pause, we'll say things are happening, but really that will be an entry point for us to do those things in a different way with a different label on them. So I agree. If you're Iran, I'm not quite sure why you're agreeing to this, which is why I think what happened was that they were planning to hit some sort of agreement that allowed for passage of vessels for a 2-week period, because everyone was like, but really the global world economy will collapse and none of us really want that. So like, it's kind of like, let's let the Russian tanker get to Cuba. Let's let some vessels through.
Yeah.
And that they were getting closer to arriving at some way of allowing that to happen. And Trump this morning was like, if that's going to happen, I need it to happen in a way that makes me look like I am the best genocide threatener that has ever managed peace in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And he did that, and everyone was like, ah, shit, he did that. We didn't know he was going to do that. And all the grown-ups in the room, or the semi-grown-ups on both sides, were like, we're not going to let that stop this, because we were going to do a 2-week grace period and get some millions of dollars for these vessels and maybe get oil prices to not be 1,000% higher in 3 months. So they just went forward with it. And everyone, I think, knows they don't really know what the 2 weeks will look like. And they definitely don't know what after the 2 weeks will look like.
Yeah.
There's definitely major capitalists in the room who are probably hoping you get some through because you don't want the collapse of the world economy. And then once once you start, you can't stop, kind of like a Pringle can sort of approach.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's getting a lot of pressure from those folks.
The thing is, the deal that they had before they did this is never coming back. It'll be the deal that Kushner and Witkoff had, which they declined by blowing up the leadership.
You mean
of Iran.
those fake negotiators they sent in who didn't know anything about what they were negotiating?
Yeah. That deal was amazingly better than what Obama had, and no one thought it was possible. But they managed to extract an even better deal. That deal is now dead. Period. They'll never get anything close to that.
No.
So and I think there's going to be some feelings on the left of like, damn, this was the one place where they were willing to punch back, and that's
Oh, they're gonna be like,
now.
oh, it really turns out that if you're like the biggest dick, you get a deal. I think that's the wrong reading.
I do too.
I also think that probably Trump has felt pushed around by Netanyahu on this and probably got pulled into something he didn't actually want or understand. And so some of the people around him might know that if you can sneak in 2 weeks of like normal vessel passing in the Strait of Hormuz, he might be like, this is what I wanted all along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back to status quo. Wow,
Yeah.
this feels good.
I like this.
I feel like I really achieved something here.
Yeah. I don't think BB's my friend anymore. You know, like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people playing this guy, and there's a lot of people that have very big vested interests, including the Iranians, who are obviously in a terrible position because they can't trust who they're negotiating with, and they are at serious risk. But like, they also hold some cards.
Yeah. On the note of like the anti-imperialist instinct of like, we love to see like the Vietnamese farmers and the Iranian mullahs like give one back to the U.S. empire. That's not their job. Their job is like, people in the third world, it's not their job to die so that the U.S. empire looks bad. Your job is to fight the U.S. empire because it's your government, not their government. So part of that is like, stop outsourcing this responsibility and start getting organized, because the empire needs to be brought down, but it needs to be brought down by like the working class in America principally. And do you really want like the anti-imperialist movement to be led by the Ayatollah in Iran?
Yeah, I mean, that's the real problem with that argument. I think...
And we don't have a genocide tonight, which is a real victory for humanity.
Well,
we will not have a genocide
If
tonight.
that was a real threat, that's a real victory.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you threaten genocide to get the Strait of Hormuz open, the folks in the room were like, yes, we will open it to stop that. That's a good choice. I don't know that this is actually the choice making that anyone's actually doing, because I think a lot of this is theater, but yes, you should make that choice. That,
Yeah.
you know, I think that the people who on the left who are just like, if anyone will fight against the US, if anyone will take down their, you know, expensive jets or blow up their military barracks or whatever, I'm on their side. That is outsourcing responsibility. It's also a complete misunderstanding of the power dynamics. Like, Iranians,
You're not on their side if you're not in a military brigade. You're not on their side.
and
You're
Iranians,
watching someone else do it.
Iranian powers that be are not revolutionary, and they're not on your side either. And you can pit people against one another. You can pit U.S. imperialism against like conservative Iranian nationalism, and you can see which capitalist-backed group gets their oil through when. But like, you're not cheerleading. Like, you as a cheerleader are on the wrong side, no matter which side you pick there. Like, you know, if there was real solidarity movements from the U.S. left to the Iranian left, that'd be a different story. There isn't, because the Iranian left was exterminated, and the U.S. left was also seems to be missing. But like, that's a lazy argument that honestly comes from like armchair activists. We don't want to see thousands and millions of people die, but we don't pick sides when both sides are exploitative creeps. You don't pick those sides.
Yep.
All right, let's do a few more.
Sure.
So this is from the SCOTUS blog. Supreme Court sides with therapist in challenge to Colorado's ban on conversion therapy. By a vote of 8-1, the justices have agreed with
8-1?
licensed counselor Kaylee Childs. She was challenging the Colorado ban that disallowed conversion therapy. So this is a therapist that's pro conversion therapy, or at least wants to be able to, I guess, prescribe and advance conversion therapy on LGBTQ youth. And in Colorado, there's a ban. Yeah. So it was challenged by her that is a infringement of her free speech. And SCOTUS 8-1 upheld that, which is feeling like for a lot of folks like a real threat to LGBTQ youth's well-being.
Yeah.
Is it the legal stuff's a little bit more complicated, which I can try to explain.
That must be why it's 8-1.
Yes. The justices, they didn't strike down the ban outright. They agreed that the ban discriminates against the therapist based on her views. and ruled that a federal appeals court should have applied a more stringent standard of review rather than a more deferential test. So the lower court used a lower stringency framework to determining if her rights were being infringed, and they found it didn't.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court is saying they needed to apply a more stringent framework. The stringent framework being strict scrutiny versus a rational basis test. So there's a little bit of like legal maneuvering here. But what it does do is where there are conversion therapy bans, which are considered for many people like human rights violations and violent practices. Those bans are all now, they might still be state law, but they are at severe risk of being overturned.
Right.
More than 20 states have banned conversion therapy for minors.
This is a weird one for me because I am actually a licensed therapist.
Do you feel like your rights are often infringed?
Well, I have conflicting feelings about
Well,
this.
also, as a licensed therapist, you're a professional doing professional stuff. You don't have free speech just as a professional. As a licensed therapist, do you often feel infringed upon?
I think so. This is complicated. One is
Not that complicated. It was 8v1.
licensure, right? Licensure is how like states can have democratic control over what people are when they call themselves a professional. What it means, like the social work license I have, looks exactly the same as the barber I noticed when I was sitting in the barber's chair. It looks exactly the same because it's the same state agency that issues licensures for barbers, and they, I'm assuming they have it because they need a certain level of education, which I also need. They need to pass some sort of tests.
Right.
And their tests are probably around like they know what they're doing.
Is your test not about that?
And also like keep their stuff clean and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think we should all be in favor of like some democratic control over when you say I'm a lawyer or you say I'm a barber, you say I'm a social worker or a therapist, what does that mean?
Sure. That's professional speech that happens in a context in which you're calling yourself a professional and giving advice or care, and that has long been not protected as ordinary free speech because it has to be regulated by the state. That's why a doctor loses their license if they say, "Oh yes, your measles are in fact caused by tulips, and you should just plant more roses."
Yeah.
They'd be like, "You can't be a doctor." Yeah, so the professional relationship is what allows for all these like regulatory contexts and frameworks, and if you do things outside of those things that are not, then it doesn't matter that you have a free speech right. You don't, which is what Ketanji Jackson, she was the dissenting vote. She kind of opened up like this seems to be an area where we've already
there's plenty of
that
legal precedent for like regulating
Yes.
certain, and it's not even speech. But here's the other side of the coin. Some of the stuff that I do is not stuff the state wants me to do, right? And I think that you can make the argument that the best people to decide like what is harmful and what is not harmful and what like both in terms of treatment and in terms of like what are problems that need to be solved and stuff. A lot of this stuff is not scientific per se. A lot of it is ideological. And the best people to sort through that are people who are professionals, who have a track record of being, of knowing the most about that particular topic. And
well, professionals are not always the best with a track record for sorting through the problems of the day.
well, but no one is. That's the thing, is no one has a track record of doing this well. The people most qualified to be part of the discussion are theoretically professionals. But that's the technical argument. The other part is political, which is I don't want this state. This is a state which doesn't have the best interests of citizens in mind. It's not actually democratic. So it's somewhat dangerous to have it playing a role in saying who is and isn't a legitimate practitioner of something like social work. Because some of the things that I do, I wouldn't brag about to the state about, because a lot of the nature of my work is political, like explicitly. And I expect, I guess I wouldn't sue if they came after me. I would expect like some sort of suppression for like my point of view.
Well,
and,
so what their argument is that there's viewpoint-based restrictions, and those are different from setting a standard of care.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, and this is all like, this is not an objective thing, but the standard of care that a regulatory body or a state government can enact, and they believe in this case crossed into disallowing viewpoints when in fact the opposite perspective is allowed. So in Colorado, the therapist has a viewpoint about use of conversion therapy and LGBTQ treatments. And there is another viewpoint, which is that you don't use conversion therapy, and that these are viewpoints versus standards of care. Now, the difference between those things is ideological. So what we decide is the standard of care.
Yeah, what's the justification for the distinction?
They're making up a distinction called viewpoint-based things that restrict the viewpoint of the professional versus things that are undermining the standard of care. No, but this is a to me a nonsense distinction, in part because the same Supreme Court upheld the right of Tennessee practitioners to disallow medical care for transgender youth. So who's setting the standard of care, and what words and viewpoints that a professional can have, who decides when those are opinions versus the standard of care?
Yeah.
And you don't obviously want the state of Colorado or the United States Supreme Court enumerating the details of every way to do care in therapy as a doctor or even as a barber, because like those people are certainly not in charge. I agree with you. They should not be in charge. You don't want the state being like, you're allowed to say this, but not this. You're allowed to do this type of care, but not this type of care. But they're trying to make a distinction here, which I think is purely ideological.
That's so all the technical concerns about like the legalities and the distinctions and all that stuff is, and even some of the stuff I'm talking about with the right of the state to regulate and stuff, all of that is secondary to the politics. The politics is primary. And in this case, I mean, like you said, the example of Tennessee, I think, makes it perfectly clear. The politics of this are to increase elements of the service industry that are unfriendly or outright hostile to trans and LGBT people in general. Mm-hmm. That's the politics that are riding underneath. And and this is what these systems do, is they tack on like technocratic legalese stuff on top of a political agenda. That's what's happening here. I think that there's the abolitionist argument is perhaps that the state should stay the fuck out of it. And I'm sympathetic to that argument. But this is where it comes down to, is like when you have conversations about who gets to say what and freedom of ideas and all that stuff, the answer to all that is like, you need to take a political position. It needs to be a principled political position. And you need to say, like, it's not about who has the right to say, it's about what is the actual statement. Mm-hmm. And in this case, the only thing that social workers in general should do, and people, onlookers should do, is say what is best for trans people, what affirms the right of existence for trans people, and that's to ban these therapies on a political basis and forget all these other considerations. Yeah, which is this political framework allows for all of this, like, to pretend that it's an apolitical thing while being political, and we should not pretend to be apolitical.
I agree. I also think, I wonder what the fallout of this will be, because it seems like it does seem like the technical reasoning they're giving is the state of Colorado was policing the therapist's opinion versus regulating the impact of the therapy, which is like, okay, a therapist can have whatever opinion they want, but we should be able to say that if it's documented as harmful, that should not be the therapy chosen. And opening up this door to be like, well, the professionals are allowed to have these viewpoints while not solving for how are we using science and evidence to determine care for LGBTQ people? Yeah. Which of course we're not, because they've got it all. Like, you literally can't have LGBTQ in a research grant. So, I mean, how would we have any evidence? So it feels like what they're doing is creating a way to elevate the viewpoint, this sort of create space for, oh, this is freedom of speech because I have viewpoints. And if you, at the same time, pull away all of the traditional ways that we have, even problematically, the traditional ways we've used science and research to create these regulations, then what you're left with is just a bunch of fucking people with viewpoints. And they're trying to empower the people whose viewpoints are dehumanize these folks and make them go back into the shadows. Yeah. And so I don't know why you get an 8v1. I feel like the freaking progressives on the court should, like, see the forest through the trees, but I guess they are technocrats.
Maybe the lawyer just did a really good job. Sometimes, the lawyer just does a really good job.
I mean, this is certainly not an activist court. If you're convincing a couple of so-called progressive justices that we're drawing a line between the therapist had a opinion and what the regulatory body can decide is harmful or not. I mean, that's BS. Like, think about all of the practitioners and physicians and nurses and therapists who have opinions about abortion, who cannot practice or even say those things out loud in certain states for fear of being charged with crimes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's obviously like, we should know that you're right, that politically it doesn't matter. All these technical things don't matter.
Even the science to some degree doesn't matter that much, because you can really, like,
I agree.
the way that science is run, you can make those numbers say whatever you want.
I agree. That has been, like, I think the go-to for how you do, like, in the US, how these regulatory bodies decide what's good and what's not good is this sort of this, like, there's been decades of this, like, slow progress of what science tells you, what evidence tells you, what multi-million-dollar research grants tell you. And clearly that is not the direction we're headed in now. No. So if you gut that and also put on the pedestal individuals' viewpoints, it's a concerning development.
Yeah.
Although I guess your viewpoint is also now protected, but of course it's not.
Of course it's not. That's I mean, that's the main thing, is like, the liberals may be more predisposed to, like, not be hypocritical about that point, although I doubt it. But this is obviously they're not going to be interested in preserving the opposite viewpoint.
Right. And just to talk about the harm here, if you have 20 or 30 states, I don't remember, that have banned conversion therapy, that is all now unenforceable.
Right.
So the incidences of youth being forced into conversion therapy is going to balloon.
Yeah.
And that is just abuse. So, like, this is the real impact of this.
Yep. And that's what they want, is they want to abuse people into falling in line into very traditional ideas of how you can be a person, probably because they're very concerned with birth rate.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a birth rate fear.
Yeah, and partially it's a
population control mechanism.
Yeah, and you would, like, is it for social
not
cohesion?
Like,
they want people to have, like, very similar lifestyles and very similar values.
That's what I mean by population control, because I don't mean
social engineering.
I don't mean having fewer people, because they want more people.
Yeah.
Okay. In lieu of an artifact this week, I want to have a longer conversation on Israel in light of this news. This is from the Human Rights Watch. Israel, discriminatory death penalty bill passes. NBC News, Israeli death penalty law targeting Palestinians sparks global outcry as far right celebrates. Okay, so from Al Jazeera we have, this is an apartheid regime. Critics decry Israel's new death penalty law. This is a news piece written by Simon Speakman Cordall from April 1st. When Israel passed a death penalty law that solely targets Palestinians, it was to be expected that the country's far right would celebrate. Even as much of the international community roundly condemns Israel for the law, with the UN human rights chief calling it a possible war crime, there's been little pushback inside of Israel. According to Israeli rights groups and analysts, the introduction of a death penalty targeting people by their ethnicity is just the latest iteration in a long line of legal measures described as having normalized an apartheid legal system under which Palestinians are subject to codified discrimination to the benefit of their Israeli neighbors and occupiers. This new law means that military courts in the occupied West Bank, which solely try Palestinians, will by default impose the death sentence to anyone found guilty by Israel's legal system of carrying out an unlawful killing of Israelis when the act is defined by the court as terrorism. Conversely, any Israeli citizen charged with an unlawful killing in the occupied West Bank, such as the 7 Palestinians killed during a spike in settler violence that has followed the start of the Israel-United States war in Iran, are tried in Israeli civilian courts. I did not know this detail, that Ben-Gvir wore a noose lapel pin and celebrated with champagne when this law passed.
Yeah. He also gave a televised tour of the execution chamber.
That is disgustingly sick.
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand, like, what else do you have to see? There's nothing else to be said about this. If you believe that terrorists should be executed, what difference does it make where the terrorist is from? So it's obvious apartheid. It's like what do they have to say is they have to change the name of the country to the apartheid state of Israel?
So some details on this. The Knesset voted 62 to 48 to make death by hanging a mandatory sentence for Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks in military courts.
Right.
These courts have a 99.7% conviction rate. So what does that tell you?
What they're doing is they're forcing the government to execute all their political prisoners, as opposed to keep them for exchanges, because they don't want to see a situation. They want Israelis being kidnapped or taken to be killed while they're being taken, and they want all Palestinian prisoners to be taken because they don't want any more exchanges. They want it to be off the table that there's exchanges by doing this.
Yep. And the stats on that is Israeli citizens who kill Palestinians are tried in civilian courts. And those civilian courts have about a 3% conviction rate.
Yeah.
So you have a 99.74% conviction rate, which is basically, I mean, that is like they convict everyone that comes through. That's what that means.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that is because they extract confessions from folks via torture. But also it's a military court and it's against it's a population that has no rights. And they're going to convict. Now, certain things come with a mandatory death by hanging, which is their celebration of it is very concerning from a cultural point of view, that they just can't wait to march all the people out and hang them. But you're right. It's so extreme in its inequitable legality. They creating legal systems that clearly not just discriminate against, but execute a class that it seems like is daring the world to be like, oh yeah, you're just an apartheid state. And of course, everyone is saying that except for the United States. It's not actually that controversial.
No,
we live in a world and in social situations and in media situations where that is still not accepted to be said.
This is where this political project, from its inception, was always headed. There was no off-road for this. If you found a nation based upon terror at anyone who is not part of the in-group, and you build a society on that basis, the only way we can be safe is to isolate ourselves from everyone else. We can only trust each other as a nationality. This is where it leads. It either dies in infancy because it's not a viable political project, or it ends up in this place. 5 years ago, Israeli workers, when they were really upset with the state of Israel, their natural allies were Palestinian workers who also had grievances against the state of Israel and the ruling class of Israel. And the ruling class of Israel has been able to use the founding mythology and this terror that they built the country on to consolidate power in ways that no other state could do, because they've created this entire narrative that the only way Jews can be safe is if you let us basically create we're in a constant siege state, it's a garrison state, and that has allowed them to get one over on the buy-in for this stuff is 90% amongst Israeli Jews.
Yeah.
And obviously the Palestinians are the ones suffering the most, but there's absolutely no possibility for progressive reform in that country now.
Yeah. I mean, as an anti-nationalist communist, you have never had any positive feelings about the political project of Israel.
No.
But I wonder, what do you make of Jews and Israeli Jews, including Israeli Jews, and Jews that support Israel who are not Israeli Jews? People connect their willingness to go along with this type of project with the trauma of surviving the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And I find it just really frightening that a group of humans that have collective trauma and very clear knowledge and experience of devastating genocidal actions that impacted millions of people, that's very close to their psyche. And I truly believe that they want that not to happen again.
Yeah.
And I tend to believe that people have reasonable intentions when it comes to that. They're reasonably scared. They're reasonably wanting to protect against it. But it has become the level of twistedness that we've seen, at least in the last. I think it's gotten precipitously worse in the last decade or so, as has most of Western society. So it's not just Israel. It's a very sick kind of world right now. But how do you? I literally don't know how you make heads or tails of something like that, because the only way I can see a human response to genocide is like, this is what happens when you other people. This isn't what happens when you other certain people, and that certain people don't deserve it. But this is what happens when you other people. And it is very dangerous, and it is very frightening, and it is very violent, and it can get very extreme very fast. And I literally don't understand a lack of human empathy in making sense of that.
Yeah. Oh, it's not even the lack of empathy. It's almost a certain like glee and like flagrantly disregarding other people's. It's like we have an excuse. This framework or in worldview gives us an excuse to like gleefully undermine the humanness of other people.
Right. And
like,
any project around human rights or universalism or solidarity or so what I wonder is like, how do you make sense of that psychologically? Politically, people take advantage of that trauma. It's rhetorically used all the time. It's used heavily in Israel. There's a lot of fear mongering that happens. There's a lot of like just like textbook nationalism about who your identity is and who's in and who's out. And that textbook nationalism, especially in a small state like that, in a state that has other things that are very like culturally unique, especially like potentially in the area surrounded by cultures that are they quote unquote unlike them. Well, there's a lot of things that are similar.
Yeah.
But they're playing that up. I understand people becoming entrenched, but what I don't understand is in your path through perhaps feeling existential fear, and whether it's reasonable or not, and looking to protect yourself in a way that probably I wouldn't agree with regardless, but like having those feelings push you to being willing to cross into what is clearly inhumane ideas and actions. Like, they're not even pretending they're not. That feels to me like, how could you go there when you have such proximity to this sort of like inhumanity at a mass scale? Like when you're so aware of what it looks like when humans do that, when you're so aware of what it looks like when humans do that, how do you let yourself go there?
I don't favor like the psychological angle in this.
It's being taken advantage of by leaders, though.
Yeah. I think if you're going to dwell in that space, like you can say like, look, when you traumatize someone with violence, what they do is they become someone who becomes violent very quickly. And because they are adapting to a world which is not violent because they prefer it that way, but is violent, and therefore they have to adapt to survive. And I think that's the moral justification is we didn't make the world a place where people get dehumanized and eliminated. We have awoken in a world like that, and our choice is to pretend that's not true and suffer the consequences, or to participate as a peer or greater to survive and beat our enemies. They're going to come at us with this.
Is that materialist?
It is. There's a post hoc justification of something that they're going to do anyway, but
right.
It is an attempt to like. It is when they say that this is important for liberal people to grasp, because liberals make the constant mistake of equating what you believe is true with what you want to be true, because that's how the liberals operate. Is what is true is what I wish was true. So
idealism.
When liberals are anti-racist, to the degree that they are able to be anti-racist, they say, I wish races were equal, therefore I believe races are equal. Those are equivalent statements. Whereas a materialist says, I believe races are equal because I know from the science, race is a social construction. There's nothing there.
Well,
nothing there.
I've heard liberals be able to explain race as a social construction.
But they like that because it gives a justification to the thing they want to believe.
Right.
In. People who aren't liberals, and Israel is not a very liberal society.
No,
they're not.
And hasn't ever really been. I was thinking about that when you were saying like you wake up in a world and you're like, this is what happens. People get killed, or either the killers or they get killed. I'm like, well, that's maybe the post international law rules based order world, but that's not. We didn't agree on that until recently. But actually, in Israel, they never really had like a liberal heyday. Well,
there was an idealistic period
yeah.
for large numbers, and not everyone, because I think there are people who are always understood what this was. But there was like the kibbutzes and we're gonna,
But they didn't have political power. They didn't have significant political power.
They were like the ideological thrust of the movement for, I mean, I'm not a historian on this, but I get the sense
No,
that there was a meaningful idealism about the political project for some
Yes,
period of time
that's true.
that dissipated.
It existed alongside flashes of having to be quite illiberal in how they pursued wars and created.
Yeah, and so they're told a much more convincing story about self-protection then than they can tell about it now.
Sure.
But yeah, I think when an Israeli says the strong survive, the weak do not, they're not saying I'm so glad about that. They're saying they believe that we're going to be stronger, you're going to be dead, and our history as a people backs that up. The most right wing, the most genocidal Israelis are the younger ones. So the more generations removed you are from the Holocaust, the more this is not run by like you or your family's history of trauma, but more of it is run by a mythology that has arisen out of that trauma, which is a self-justifying thing. And I think it's much more political than it is anything else. There's a lot of ways to deal with like historical trauma and the question of nationality. Like the Jewish Bund, for example, said like my country is where I am. That's how I feel. I'm Jewish, but I feel that my country is the place that I am. I think that there's absolutely nothing about being part of a diaspora. I mean, Israeli Jews think that like life in the diaspora is not worth living. Like it's a joke. It's akin to like a joke, or like what we would call like a cuck or something like that. It's sort of a, what are you do? Why would you live in someone else's country? And I feel exactly the opposite. That like this is the society. This is my society as much as it is anyone else's, and that there's something neat about the politics of diaspora, which give more value to my life and the values of other people, including the fact that I get to interact with other diasporas and stuff like that. So
Diversity and solidarity in the diaspora is, I don't know how you want to say it.
Look,
I
can say whatever I want.
I respect how you want to say it because I am not in a diaspora, I don't think. I think though, what I was gonna say, do you think that you were starting to say like historical traumas can be dealt with
in any number of
in a
ways?
number
You can say like,
is nationalism the problem of this, the way this historical trauma was dealt with?
nationalism is a very, very convenient thing for capitalists in every context.
And World War
And
II
it
loves
works.
to end with nationalism.
And it works or doesn't work depending on like certain things outside the ruling class's control. But the steering this towards nationalism was a choice of the Jewish elite and their political class, and they found a lot of ways to get what they wanted by pushing this narrative that there is only one place that you're safe. We're the only ones that can keep you safe. There's only one way to become safe, and it's by doing these series of things. And the more rabidly in support of this you become, the safer you become, which is obviously the opposite is true. Like I'm much safer living where I live than I would be living in Tel Aviv.
Oh yeah.
So, and they might counter and say like, yeah, you feel that way now, but like wait till the pogroms start, and then where are you going to go? Because there's going to be nowhere else for you to go except for there's one place in the world where there's not going to be anti-Jewish pogroms, and it's going to be in Tel Aviv. And like fair enough, like racism is a threat everywhere, but like there's multiracial solidarity is an alternative political story to tell about that. So I think that the trauma is the fertile ground, but the subject of this is not the historical trauma or like the Jewish identity. It's like bad faith actors who are squeezing this for as much as they can get out of it.
So what stopped the Holocaust? I mean, the Holocaust basically was a fairly successful program. It went on for years and years and killed millions and millions of people. And it was stopped eventually by the liberation of the U.S. and the USSR's armies during World War II. But
Mostly USSR.
it was mostly the USSR. But it was stopped by the Allies winning the war. It was not stopped by a multiracial solidarity battalion that was sort of like...
It wasn't?
Well...
Was it stopped by a Jewish state? Or was it stopped by Jewish people because only Jewish people could possibly care that this was happening to Jewish people?
It was absolutely...
Or did it happen, the Red Army and the American Army were multiracial armies?
So I guess...
That were not even largely Jewish.
So,
not,
my question, I guess, here is, you end up with this thing being stopped, and then you end up post-World War II with mostly capitalist countries, I guess also a significant communist country, divvying back up the world in nation states.
Mm-hmm.
And the politics of it all doesn't lend itself to telling a story about why this stuff happens, what stops this stuff, and how to like build a resilient society that doesn't do this. However, and so we are now here.
Yeah.
My question was going to be if there had been more like rescuing the historical memory of what liberation looks like, of what resistance and solidarity looks like, and what multiracial work to disallow this versus like garrison nations, ethno-nation states. Could we be in a different world? Because it feels like this was like, it feels like we're here because we were on this train started in like the 1940s, maybe the 1950s.
Yeah.
But you're right. It was a communist multiracial army that did liberate these people. The camps.
Now, I don't want to overstate that because the Soviet Union did not invade Germany to liberate the camps.
No.
Also, the United States would not allow Jews to come here to escape the Holocaust,
right?
Which is why a lot of them ended up in Latin America or fucking Israel. So you can way overstate that.
Although most of them didn't go to Israel during escapes. They went a lot of them ended up in Israel after the war. But yes, no one was in World War II to save the Jews. That was no one's agenda. However, what did happen was the Holocaust was stopped. Nazi Germany was stopped by certain world powers. And so what I'm wondering is it the legacy of the way of those, the politics of those moments that got us to here? Was it just, capitalism and ascendance and like, this is the way it was going to be? Colonial project. I mean, I know you don't consider Israel like a colonial project, but like, was it just like the colonial projects were what was done? And like, they followed a particular set of blueprints. And like, this is like necessarily, if you have an ethno-nationalist state like this, especially on land where other people existed, you're going to have something that looks like this. Was there an alternative reality where like there was more rescuing the historical narrative of communism or multiracial solidarity that would have built a different story?
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff to say about the history, and I'm not a good enough historian to like go into great detail about like what the offshoots were, but I can say something with some confidence. If there's not oil in the Middle East, then Israel doesn't exist. And we have instead a Jewish diaspora that's more spread out across the world, probably a lot more in the United States.
Yep.
Probably a lot more in the Soviet Union.
I believe
the former Soviet
that the
Union.
second most concentrated area of Jews after Israel is in New York.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's what you end up with, and how that goes over the long run, I don't know.
Is that just Is that a slow extermination of the Jews?
Well, it hasn't been so far. Yeah. I mean, and if you think if Germany started doing a Holocaust today, Israel would be invading Germany. They wouldn't be. What they would be doing is they would be telling their own population this is why every Jew needs to move to Israel from wherever they are, and two, they'd be making deals to buy the Jews from Germany.
They would certainly be bombing Lebanon.
Yeah, that's what their focus is. But the Israel exists because Britain and then the United States needed a powerful proxy in the Middle East to dominate oil. And if that were not the case, there would be no Israeli economy. There would never have been a state capable of surviving in that location, and most of the Jews would not have moved there. So, and then what would you have had? You have to ask yourself, so what does that look like? It would look like people being in diverse places and not thinking of it too much. It would look like cosmopolitanism, and that would be just taken for granted as like the way it was for like Jewish people.
So you don't think it's a foregone conclusion that a population that is targeted in genocide and for a surviving concentrated population will...
Absolutely not. It only happens if it's of value to the ruling class.
Right.
And if it's not, it doesn't happen.
And so this is a particular set of very specific circumstances.
Yes.
I agree. But I do wonder about the psychology of the individuals because it feels so sad. So sad. So like, how could you believe in your own self? Right.
Right. I mean, I think the attitude about the war with Iran, for example, which the United States is being encountered as like a war of choice by a crazy president and his team of lackeys who don't know anything.
That's not what it is.
We did not have to do this.
I see. Sorry. You're saying that's what people
did it.
Yeah.
It's not very smart to do it. In Israel, it's experienced as typical of the existence of Jews. It's experienced as the world is very warlike, we would rather not be at war, but it seems that the fate of our people is to survive through warfare, and it is what it is. And that our political leadership is not responsible for it. Our state composition is not responsible for it. It is our neighbors.
Is that a you feel like that's an Israeli predisposition? Do you have any connection to that as a Jewish predisposition?
No. I guess there's two things I can say about it, like with summoning as much empathy as I can, is I do think that the human consciousness is a contradiction between how collective and community minded we are, and also how much we enjoy like learning about new through other people, and like the collision of cultures and stuff. I think it excites and invigorates humanity, but I think there's also parts of the human psyche that really enjoy in-group out-group and like the stability and structure of that. And I think that exists because like there was like tribal reasoning is a real thing. Like the tribe is the tribe, and that's the collective, and then the people outside the tribe are a different matter, and they think that's emotionally satisfying.
I've been thinking about this, and I mean, people know much more about this than I do. But the thing I've been thinking about recently is the reason for that in human psychology and biology. I think is a challenge of scalability. There's there's a limit to our understanding of how much a human community can scale because of a predisposition to how we socialize. And so like one way to protect that is with in-group out-group stuff, where you're like, there's a certain amount of structure and collectivism we can have that makes sense to us at like a individual human level. And like when you hit certain like amounts of scale, it becomes very difficult to maintain it as like a social human thing. And so you start to it's like a mechanism of it's a constraint mechanism. That's just the thing I've been thinking about.
I understand the argument. I've heard it before, and I think in its best, the argument is an attempt to explain observable phenomenon, like current / recent / ancient human history. But I feel like there's so much. It's similar to a lot of debates about like human nature versus like context. There's so much other determining factors in all of these dynamics that to boil it down to like biology seems to me to be like extremely wrongheaded. Like we're talking, for instance, in this case about like the outsized role that like political economy has played in shaping these relationships. I don't know how you could possibly make these claims about what people are capable of without eliminating class as like the major determining factor for how humans relate.
I totally agree. I think that my thinking has been about like how humans create in and out groups, why they do it, and how that's like there's something about being a social creature that actually creates that. Like this is the tension you're talking about. You're interested in sort of being social, and social in order to advance your own survival requires a level of like connectiveness and care, but it also requires a level of protectiveness and distance, and the cultural understanding or various structures can only be so big if you're just an ancient social human. However, we've had in what is basically the very, very recent history of humans, the last 200 to 300 years, which is a like small sliver of humans, has been all about scale and connectivity and political economy and capitalism. So that is a very particular existence for our like biology to exist in, and obviously I would say that is the primary driver of most things that we try to describe about what humans are doing. But I do think that there's a dialectic about how humans operate as a social being that is both about care and community and collectivism, and about distancing and othering. And those are, I think, tapped into by powerful people.
I mean, a lot of left-wing movements are also, the engine of them is these are our enemies, this is how we beat them. And we don't have to exist in this unsteady stalemate. We can win. We can actually defeat our enemies, smash our enemies. Mao talks about smashing our enemies with with communism. It's a tool which we hammer, which we smash our enemies with. I don't know.
I think I've been thinking about that a lot too. Actually, how do you define yourself in a moment like this moment, a particularly fascist moment, where there's a lot of defining against things. But fascism, interestingly, likes to define itself for things. It's usually a nostalgic, non-existent past, but it likes to define itself both against things like immigrants and women, but like also it has a very positive definition of what it is saying it is, even though what it's saying it is an illusion.
Yeah.
Which I think is more appealing than what you see from resistance parties, which is much more a definition against and appeals to a certain thing in the human psyche, which may or may not be the best thing to appeal to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mistake. I think that...
But when you're defining, as leftists, when you're defining a non-realized future, I think leftists, they're not fascists, so they don't like just make shit up.
Right.
So they're like, I don't know. But there's a discomfort with imagining it and claiming it.
Right.
So you just end up saying, well, it just won't be this.
It's not very scientific to say this is what it's going to look like when you're talking about something that has not been achieved. I will also add on, that's like the kind way of framing it. There's also a more unkind way of framing it, which is they don't want to cause division by it's much easier to build solidarity around what we're against than what we're for. And I think a lot of places don't want to have a fight about like the details of what we're after as much as they want to build like common cause around the common enemy. And I think that's a mistake. I really do. You people deserve to have a vision of what we're building, and people's understanding of what like socialist projects of the 20th century look like, I think have poisoned the well a little bit. And some people are afraid to like delve into like what about those do we like? What went wrong? What is misunderstood about those experiences, etc.
Yeah. And I appreciate that the instinct of leftists is to be more scientific and disciplined about what they share as far as what's possible, unlike, fascism, which is philosophically driven to just be full of shit. But
yeah, I know it doesn't. It's impossible for fascism to be
right. Like literally, it has to be. It has to be lies, and so I understand the difference. But I do, similar, as we were saying, that this is like just a very, very small sliver of human history, becoming so stuck on what is true right now, and having like the call to action and the vision be so stuck on what it is not, and what it is not. Putting yourself against something that is in fact like just a condition right now, and not being able to have a conversation about what it could look like as humans who have a very, very, very much longer story and a much broader set of experiences that we could someday have, or that we have had. It just seems so small and short-sighted and like a trap.
Your powers will fade.
Well, done and dusted.
Done and dusted.
Your powers will fade as you grow old. Your powers will fade as you grow old. You're on the make and you don't do regret. You're always out for what you can get. You think like a snake and you ooze like a snail. Let the trail go cold as you swallow your tail. With your low rent skills and your heart of flint, telling your tales that are unfit to print. You're all weasel words, backed up by the boots, obsessed like the rest, with a promise of loot. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old.
I love you.
Do you know kids at school who use they them pronouns? How many?
A few,
Just a few. Why are they using that pronoun?
because they want him.
Yeah. Do you know what the difference between sex and gender is?
Yes. The difference is sex is your birth pronouns, the pronouns you get from your body parts, and gender is the pronouns you prefer.
It's a very
What-
good answer.
It is a good answer. What do you think should happen if someone gets misgendered at school?
They should tell them not to use that gender, and if they keep doing it on purpose, they should tell a teacher.
All right, what do you think the teacher should do if someone is misgendering someone on purpose?
She or he should tell them to stop. She or they should tell them to stop.
Very good.